I think this is true for anybody going through addiction. It is so much harder. It is so much harder to stay the same than it is to change. First of all, one drink does sound great. And I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm not going to sit here and like, yeah, if I could go have one drink, awesome. But that has never been that's not what I've been able to prove to myself so far. So a lot of times I would lay on that couch in that living room in the fetal position, fucking sobbing, just heartbroken, so scared, so confused, so like no idea, praying to be somewhere different, praying to get through this, just broken, like fucking broken. These emotions just came up so intensely. And the key there for me was something that you said, and was
if I only do that for the rest of my life, then I have a tool that's going to help me navigate anything. The thing that has been the most profoundly changing for me is exactly what you said. What would you tell somebody that's listening that is so scared of change, or that they don't believe that they can, like you did? What do you say to them? This is Em Hollis, and welcome to the messy truth of transformation, where it's okay to be magical and messy. This isn't your typical personal growth podcast. Around here, we talk about the real stuff, the raw, the honest, the shadow work, the spirals, the breakthroughs, and the beautiful chaos of becoming who you were always meant to be. If you've ever felt alone on your healing and growth journey, or you wondered why it feels hard even when you're doing the work, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. Let's dive into the messy truth of what it actually takes to transform your life. So, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the messy truth of transformation. Today's episode I am super excited about. It's going to be raw and real, and also a really, really important discussion for a lot of people. I have a guest here today that is a dear friend of mine. He is somebody that I deeply admire because he's gone through a lot of growth in his life. He's gone through a lot of shit, and he's gone through a lot of growth. But honestly, for his honesty, his humility, and most of all, his ginormous heart. I know you thought I was going to say something different there, but no, ginormous heart. Really, this man is pure heart. He knows firsthand what it means to struggle and wrestle with addiction, to carry shame, to feel lost, and then also to find the courage to change. And that's really what we're going to be talking today. Not just about overcoming his addictions. Obviously, we're talking about messy truths. We're going to talk about the dark parts, but also obviously the turning points, the healing, and then the deep truths that he learned along the way. If you've ever struggled with something that felt bigger with you, you've ever struggled with addiction, or you've loved someone that has, I promise you this episode is going to land deeply. So with that being said, let's dive in. Welcome, Stanton Carter.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'm in the name of being messy and authentic. I am nervous. I have not done a podcast before, but here we are.
Here we are. We're both nervous. It's okay. That's the messy part and authentic part, right? But we're going to make it through. And I know everything that you share is going to be so incredibly valuable for people who are on the journey, not just with addiction, but who are on a personal growth journey and find themselves in this spot. And it's almost like it can bring an extra level of shame. But we're going to dive into that a little bit later. What I want to start with is I want to start from the very beginning. So the first question that I want to ask you, that I want to dive deep into, is what does 5925 North County Road mean to you, and how has it shaped your life?
Oh my God. I was not expecting that question at all. I could take up the entire podcast with just that question. I feel like it means so many things to me. I mean, a million things to me. So I guess in a nutshell, when I was 13 years old, my mom moved us to that address from a very small, there were maybe 300 people in that town. It's what many people would call toxic, a very toxic town. There's a lot of sexual abuse going on of children, a lot of very heavy, deep things that were not so great. I was not aware of that at the time. I was only 13 years old. So she moved us from that town to that address. This beautiful, funky house from the 1970s up on 12 acres in the mountains. And it was the beginning of just a huge shift in my life. I was at that age, it was puberty too. So just kind of coming to the realization that I might be gay. that all of a sudden I found men attractive. And I was like, okay, so that's just one little layer of this that was happening at the same time. And that and a million other reasons, it was so perfect for me. I didn't know it at the time. I was mad at my mom for moving us there, but we moved to a much more progressive, not really city, but 60, 70,000 people. So much bigger than 300 people. There's 400 people in my freshman class, which was more than the whole town I came from. Um, and there was much more space for me coming to terms with my sexuality here than there ever would have been there. And again, that is just one sliver of all the things that kind of opened up by moving here. Um, it's pretty interesting too, because my mom had a dream. This is the story I've been told, is that aliens or something, not necessarily aliens, but something bigger than her or something, up there, picked her up and asked her to bless a valley. And in the stream, they flew her over this valley, and apparently she told me years later that it looked just like that valley, that property over sits and looks. She said it looked identical to it in that dream. And I do remember, this was many years ago, but we looked at a lot of homes before she settled on that home, and a lot of the houses we looked at were nicer, newer, physically more, more appealing in certain ways. But she was just like immediately drawn to that home. And then there's even a Carter graveyard on that property too, which we found out were related to those people. They're the people that founded that valley from the late 1800s. So there's so much history and everything there. And that was like, I kind of look at that, and my whole family looks at that as like our childhood home and just a whole new fresh start. So we were able to, my brother and I were able to buy that home for our mom. And that was like a huge, huge, huge dream come true. Huge. Like, I would lay in bed since I was a kid just dreaming of that opportunity one day, and we did it. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool to be an adult and to be able to do these things. So huge, like so powerful to me because of my deep relationship and love for my mother to be able to do that. So much time, energy, love, all the things from me, from my whole family went into that property. And it was so much more than a property, obviously, to us, and still is to me. And then as things, there's a lot to the story, as you know. But for the sake of time, things changed. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it turned into a lot of surrendering for me, where it got to a point where I had so much energetically and emotionally attached to that place that I had to let a lot of that go. There's this vision that we all have of how we picture things working. And so often that's not how things work, and that's in coming to terms with that. And so this couple of years, but in particular, like the last 6 months of my life has been kind of letting that go and finding the beauty in all the moments that were there through all of it, but also realizing it's time to detach a little bit from that, and that it's no longer useful to me in the next chapters of my life, and
Wow.
finding a way to kind of create new stories.
Yeah. It's been incredible to watch you navigate this, because I know we're close friends, so I know how much that space, that home, that land has meant to you, and to watch you sort of let go of that so that it can blossom to something different has been really inspirational to watch. And the other aspect of that is you have done that transition, many other transitions that we're going to dive into. And at the same time, going through now, how many days have you not had a drink of alcohol?
Not that I'm keeping track, but 108 days.
108 days.
Yeah.
108 days. So before we sort of dive into that and the journey of not drinking and the journey of drinking, I would love to find out. I mean, you said you moved in the house when you were 13. And as you said, another big important milestone was you coming out that you were gay to your family and friends. And so how do you think that at that age, 13, moving into the new house, understanding that you were gay, being more acceptable, how then was the transition, and how did that house sort of influence your journey with alcohol? Like, was there a moment that it started, and how did that all influence when it started?
How did that house influence my relationship with alcohol?
Yeah.
I think many things influenced my relationship with alcohol, and of course that was a big part of it. Because just to be completely honest, I have tons of happy memories at that home with alcohol included.
Yeah.
Involved, like So I won't ever sit here and say that like alcohol's, it's it's different for everybody, and it's not at all that everything involving alcohol was like completely awful in my life. It's much bigger than that for me personally. But um, what I do know, and I think there's a good chance I would have probably struggled with alcohol, whether that house existed or not. But with that in mind, I know for sure over the last couple of years, my resistance of letting go, of kind of surrendering to like something that I saw as so beautiful and so I had such a clear image of how I wanted that to go and it was a beautiful image. I don't judge myself for that image. But I didn't know how to kind of surrender to that. And I think that fed my addiction as well. Like many other things in my life, I wasn't really for sure how to surrender to. And so as the pain and confusion around like trying to navigate that grew deeper,
Mm,
um, it did feel my addiction. And
mm,
also it kind of became a limited perspective as far as possibilities, where there was so much emphasis on that. Um, and then as that was not turning into what my heart ultimately wanted, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there was even with the things changing, it still was a very beautiful experience, so many aspects of it. And I did surrender to a lot of the things, my mother with Alzheimer's and the journey there. It got to a point where the alcohol and was keeping me in this loop of kind of just stuck in this in everything that has been versus everything that can be.
mm,
And the deeper I got down into that, the less and less I saw all the opportunities for what could be. It
mm,
was just so much grief and
mm. Wow.
of what wasn't, if that makes sense.
Wow. Wow. Would you say that you have an addictive personality in general? Because a lot of people that struggle with addiction, they would say, it doesn't matter, like replace it with whatever. I just have that sort of addictive personality. Would you say you're somebody that has that and that sort of led to your struggle with alcohol? Or would you say alcohol was simply a band-aid that I was using for a really painful part of my life?
That's hard to say because I mean, I have mixed feelings about the whole concept of an addictive personality. I think that we all reach different things for different reasons at different times in our lives. And that's a whole other conversation. Like alcohol itself is an addictive substance. And so that's still, again, a whole other thing. But why some people really get hooked to that and others don't, that's a whole other thing to explore. But for me, it was definitely largely a band aid too. And
Mm,
I mean, 108 days, there's still not every day, but still multiple days where I can very clearly remember what it feels like to take that drink and
mm,
for that to reset your nervous system and to kind of just for the mind to pause in a certain way.
mhm,
And so I've been very honest with myself through as honest as I know to be through my recovery process or sobriety. Um, I did a lot of AA in the beginning, and anyone that sobers up is going to find there's all kinds of different avenues out there as ways to approach it, and of course do whatever's helpful to you. And I totally just lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
yeah.
What was your question?
Totally okay. Let's rewind a little bit and let's go back to, I believe it was March or April of 2020. That's when we first met, right? My husband and I we were doing the online coaching thing, and he had, or I had, I can't remember, can't recall perfectly, but one of us had posted something, and you had been sort of, I believe, studying the work Dr. Joe Dispenza and stumbled upon us, and you had a conversation with my husband on the phone that would completely alter your life for a bit and
Hmm.
ours for knowing you. So where were you at in that moment in 2020, and where were you at so we can sort of get a starting point, because we sort of we fast forwarded a little bit so we can give the audience a starting point of where the relationship with alcohol started to become unhealthy, we could say. So in 2020 we meet, you decide to join our coaching program. Where were you at in your life then? What were you feeling? And what was your relationship with alcohol at that point?
Okay, so yeah, 2020. Yeah, I travel for work, and so I was in Texas at the time, and I remember I would watch you and Scott, your husband partner, your videos on Facebook on different. I'd followed a bunch of different spiritual teachers or different groups around those teachers, and I would come across both of you quite a bit in there, and I would, sit there on the toilet in the morning before I would get ready for work and be like these people are on to something. There's something that they're onto that I really that just resonated with me. So I was for months and months, I'd watch from a distance and kind of just plant those seeds in my head. I think on the outside looking in, my life looked good. You know, I made good money. I was reasonably happy, which is kind of an absurd thing to say. You know, who wants to be reasonably happy? But I
Yeah.
was happy, I think, by society standards. You know, every box I could kind of check, every traditional box I could check, and um, but I mean, since I was a kid, I've just known there's so much more, so much more. And when you know that you can only do so much to ignore that. And the more you try to ignore that, yeah, the messier it gets. But so there was this deep yearning for me, like for more connection. And I'd watch your guys' videos and just, yeah, kept planting those seeds. At that time, functional alcoholic, I guess is what they call it, where I worked my ass off. I mean, worked 60, 70 hours a week.
Wow.
Um, that was just, it was more of a lifestyle than an actual job. And so and again, everything on the outside looked okay, but I mean, I was well aware. And so I was, you know, functional. I could do all the things that a human does fine and actually in a lot of ways really well. But I don't think anyone that drinks every evening that, you know, more than a drink or two has any, maybe they do. I didn't have any denial that that was not
Mm,
ideal and that there was a reason why I
mm,
was doing that. However, it was so normal for the people around me and for the industry that I worked in that that was just you work your ass off and you go home and you drink. And again, like I've been very honest with myself about this. There are a lot of happy memories with that, you know, but it goes much beyond, you know, there's a whole other side of what alcohol can bring. And so yeah, I knew that there was much more than I wanted. I knew that was not alcohol was not a good thing in my life. And when I reached out to you, I think I've told you this before in 2020, there was a part of me that almost didn't reach out because I was like, what can I really gain from these courses that these people are offering when when I know that I'm addicted to alcohol, you know? And so I almost didn't give myself that opportunity. I'm so glad that I did. It didn't obviously at all mean that alcohol or addiction was not something I needed to address in my life, but um, yeah, it was in many ways. It kept me in that very familiar box, like almost not even reaching out to you guys, because I'm like, well, this is my life, this traditional, you know, in this system, and I didn't know really a way out of it, but
yeah.
it sure opened up a lot of things when
Wow. Wow. As somebody that was an addict for 10 years, I think that it can be really tricky when the addiction is, it's not like it's meth or something to where you're doing it illegally. When it's something like alcohol and pain pills, it sort of makes it easier for you to lie to yourself. At least it was for me. It was like I'm living my normal life. I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, and yet I have this, secret addiction that no one in my life knew. It may be even more difficult with alcohol because it's so accepted as sort of normal. Sounds like, especially in your industry, that's what people did. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. I listened to a book that it's This Naked Mind. It's a really good book, kind of about alcohol, and she talks about like even like baby showers, how there's just anything, any celebration in our culture, alcohol, you know. And I'm not judging by any means. I will never
Sure.
judge because I could
Sure.
run with the best of them for sure. But and then she's like, "Which can you imagine like cocaine at your baby shower? Like, would that be acceptable?"
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, Of course not." But in
Yeah.
our culture, if it's more unusual to people to say I don't drink alcohol. You know, that throws people off completely, and it as some huge red flag where I'm like, alcohol is a poison. You know, it's and I, again, no judgment at
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
and yeah, with my industry, it was I think most everyone knew that it wasn't ideal, but it was just that was a normal way of living. Just if you
Yeah.
flash back to 40 years ago, you
Yeah.
know, the normal of way of living was quite a
Yeah.
bit different than nowadays,
Yeah.
and that little world I was a part of that was completely accepted.
Yeah. So do you think that there was a moment that you were like, I have to, like, this is a problem? This is, or was it sort of more gradual? Like, I know it's a problem, but I'm not really, was there a moment like, this is a problem?
There were many moments where, yeah, I knew this was a problem, and it was gradual. But to be honest, I mean, because I was sober from my dad, he had a liver transplant over 20 years ago, and he recently passed, as you know, which he probably wouldn't have if that liver transplant never have occurred. That's a whole other story. But So when I was 20 years old, I didn't drink in high school. I didn't, student body president, all the things, like, was again a whole other conversation of the way I had programmed myself to be and how to fit in and be liked and who I should be in this world and blah blah blah. All the things there. Went to college and I started off on the exact same trajectory of like student body president freshman year and perfect grades and all these things. And then something inside me just kind of erupted where a big fuck you to all of it kind of went off inside me, and where I all of a sudden I was asking myself much deeper questions about myself, the reality of the universe, of what we're all doing as a species, as a society. And I just saw I didn't want to continue being the same version of myself that I'd been, and that so much of what I was doing was not really for me. It was what I thought I was supposed to be, and it it didn't feel fulfilling anymore. As good as it, as many boxes I could check. But so then freshman year in college, all of a sudden drinking. That was my way of being like, fuck this. I'm gonna do, you know what I mean? Like a bit kind of my first like major rebellion in my life, because I was always a pretty good kid, all the things like that. And long story short, that within a year that just went so wild so quickly that I was like, nope, this is not for me. And so I quit drinking. I was sober for 5 years. So I was sober on my 21st birthday. Um, and that was right around the time when, my dad had because of his own struggle with alcohol. He had his own liver transplant. And that was just more confirmation for me that, okay, this is not a great thing. Sober for 5 years, until I was 25 years old, which most people at 20 years old are not sober. Uh, and so starting again, like I remembered very clearly the day where I had a beer again. My brother was like, I was having a particularly difficult time in the relationship I was in at the moment. And my brother was like, dude, you overthink things. Like, just have a drink, just relax. And I don't fault him for his perspective on things at the time, because it worked for me too. And because honestly, within months of being sober, I would go to parties with all my friends and everything. And I say this as complete truth. There was 0% of me that wanted a drink. I was very happy to be the person that was pretty much the only person at those parties that was sober. Um, and so I, like, in my head, I had a whole different frame of reference for addiction at the time. But I'm like, yeah, it's been 5 years. Haven't craved it. It was never even this whole like, don't do it, man. Just don't do it. The first couple months were, but after that, for years, it was like, I genuinely did not I had no interest in it. And so from my perspective at the time, when my brother's like, hey, dude, just have a beer, chill out. I'm like, yeah, it's been 5 years. It's all good. It's no big deal. To me, it felt like someone saying like, have a cookie. Yeah, at the time. Like, it's no big deal. Obviously very different nature there. And then from that one drink, I mean, it took me no time to kind of realize, even though I was holding together on the outside for quite some time, it took me no time really to realize that this was not what I wanted. And I remember, or what I should be doing, what was best for me. And I remember, I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't have to drink every night or anything like that, but I wanted to, like, almost
Wow.
immediately. And
Wow.
so those times where I'm like, yeah, I'm not drinking tonight. My friends would, I put on a show, like I was fine with it and everything, but it's not what I wanted to be doing. I didn't want to be the sober one there at the time. And so, yeah, there was no doubt in my mind
Wow.
that right away it was not a good thing for me again.
Wow. And so messy truth time, did it start to become like an everyday thing at that point from then on?
Very
Wow.
quickly. Yeah.
Wow.
Almost,
Wow.
yeah, almost immediately. And
Fascinating.
at the time it was different because everyone was still young, and we're
Yeah.
camping and doing all these things all the time. So it was very normal for,
Yeah.
even for the people that I don't think had the same kind of relationship with it as me, for them to still be drinking quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
When did you start working in the industry that you work in, that I know is, plays a part in that because of the culture?
on and off since I've been 18 years old. So
Oh, wow. So
I'm,
that's been part of your life too.
yeah, I'm 29 years old now. So it's, for the last, I'm a little bit older
I
than
was like,
29.
I know you're not 29.
Pretty
That is
close.
not a truth.
So yeah, half my life I've been in
Wow.
and out of and that was the industry my dad, I grew up around that. And so
Yeah.
that was very normal, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the day that you decided, like, okay, and this is 5 years into what you could, I think, agree with, has been a journey of spiritual growth, personal growth, healing. I would say you've been fully immersed sort of in that world for the last 5 years. I do remember a conversation on the phone with you years ago where you did call me because you knew I had struggled with addiction. I've always been very, I've always talked about that very openly. And I remember having a conversation with you on the phone. And I had a suspicion that that was something that you maybe struggled with. But as an addict, I know also the shame. Like for me, not one person knew in my life except for my then husband, because he was an addict too. But other than that, not one person knew. And so for me, just speaking it out loud, I remember the first time I did it was to our mutual friend, Estelle. She was the first person I said it out loud to. And it was like, oh my gosh, So when we had that conversation, you called me and said, hey, I need to talk about something. And you shared that with me. How did that feel?
I knew I needed to do that because the way that I saw that at the time was it it was a little bit different than your story because a lot of people close to me knew, that
Yeah.
they had a whole different frame of reference for it because a lot of them were also alcoholics themselves, so it wasn't necessarily a secret in my life, because
Yeah.
a lot of what was around me, a lot of the people around me, that was pretty normal. And
Yeah.
again, I was functioning, I was still able to do
Yeah.
very loving, beautiful, great things and all the things. But and that was the difference because it wasn't necessarily unknown in my world, at least the people around me. But the reason I called you in particular was because, well, A, you're a frame of reference for all of it and the faith that I have in you. And but ultimately because I knew you were someone that if I put this in front of you, it was a whole different way of acknowledging it inside myself. Because
Mm,
I couldn't run from it the same way because you were someone that I had so much respect and trust for that it was just so different than me telling my brother, you know what I mean? Because my brother,
mm,
or someone close to me that I knew also struggled with it as well. Because it was like, well, yeah, we all do, versus with you, it's like it was a whole different level of owning it. Like, okay,
yeah.
once this is out there, I can't, at least with this person, somebody that I respect and love very much. I can't just pretend again in the same way, I keep doing the same thing as business as usual and go back to pretending that,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I have a problem. But anyhow, it's like, no, this is shining a really big light on it for me at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I want to talk about another moment, and it's going to make me emotional for some reason. It's the messy truth. Scott said that you better watch out because I put something in the water because he's crying every second. Now I must have put it in my own water. So there was another big moment between you and I. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You had come down to Florida, and I think I don't know why you came down. Maybe we were doing some work stuff, something like that. And I believe clarify this. It seemed as though in that time period, maybe the alcohol had become more intense and become more of a part of your life. And you showed up to our apartment one morning and your face was, it just looked torn up.
Hmm.
It was almost kind of scary. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is bad. And we
Hmm.
sat down and had a conversation, and I was very clear about boundaries that I had. And it was really hard to say that to you because you were somebody that I did so love so much. I think you and I have always had a heart connection, a really deep one, and deep respect for each other, I think too. And that was a hard conversation for me to have, but I knew it was something that I needed in my life. I needed to have boundaries from that because of what I had gone through with addiction and things like that.
Hmm.
And I know it was a hard moment for you as well, obviously. So tell me, share with those that are listening, because we're all about messy truths here, what that moment was like for you.
Gut wrenching, awful. Uh, and yeah, I remember that moment very clearly. It was you, me, Scott, Simon, and Ninja Bear. So yeah, I went out down in Florida having fun. I thought, and I'd opened up to you about the fact that I was struggling with addiction or with alcohol, and kind of where my brain was at the time was that, okay, we have this trip. I know I'm not ready to quit right this moment. When I get back from this trip, I will,
Wow.
I'll address this. And that's kind of where I was at the time. And so it's funny how the mind works because that night I was, I'd been in a 14-year relationship. I've always kind of like had other things in my life that I was kind of hiding behind or letting other people kind of, I don't know, And so in my head at the time, because Ninja and I had talked about like, oh, going out and grabbing some drinks, one of these nights. And then there was one night that night where I was like, I'm gonna go out by myself. Like I'm like, and at the time, I simultaneously knew that alcohol was not good for me, but I was like, this is me pushing an edge. This is me like being like, I've never gone out. I always hide behind other people. Like, go do your thing, go have fun, go, like if you're gonna be drinking, might as well go, do something out of your comfort zone with it. Which I see both sides of that. Like that's not what I should have been doing, but at the same time, like knowing that like I'm gonna be drinking either way. So there's a part of me, a little sliver of me was like proud, like and it was actually a good night, like a good night on that front, as far as like I went out and I did something I've never done before, and I talked with strangers and had a good night. And so everything went good on that front. Of course, drank plenty. And I got back to your travel trailer that I was staying at for, that vacation. And there was a concrete slab and just tripped and fell right on my face. And I still have pictures of it, just blood, black eye. I mean, awful, awful. And I remember the next morning, Ninja, you guys are all going out on the boat. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going out on that boat. Because I just felt awful. But even way more than the physical part was the spiritual and emotional part, where I'm like, there weren't awfuls, can't even begin to describe. Like, so like, it was, as I told you, like, it was on my face. There was literally on my face. There was no more running from it or hiding from it or putting on a show around it. And so, yeah, I remember the next day, 2 days after that, showing up at you and Scott's place and sitting there, and just Scott gave me a big hug, and I'm like, it was such a heavy, heavy feeling where like everyone knows. And I was so grateful for that hug from Scott, because I know it didn't mean like, I know it meant a lot of things, but it also meant it was love. And it was like, okay, I love you, buddy. But it didn't mean that was the end of the conversation. And I also knew that. And so we get there, and I remember you saying, like, we need to address the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room was this giant ugliness on my face and it was heartbreaking. But the thing is, at the time, and because you guys, I had never had those kinds of relationships in my life. I had never worked in that kind of capacity with people that I ever in my life. And it was so meaningful to me. It was still to this day, one of the most special opportunities I've ever had, and most special relationships I've ever had. And so it had, knowing in that moment, and I didn't blame anybody. I'm like, well, of course we're not on the same page. This is, but it was heartbreaking, and just made me hate myself even more. Like, like, how can you have this and still be fumbling so hard, with that this is still winning. It's still, when it's all said and done, this is still winning. And I felt about 2 inches tall. And one of the most beautiful things I felt like I had created in my adult life for myself, I knew was probably going away. And there's a part of me, I wanted to hold on to it so bad, of course, because I'm like, holy shit, what happens if this goes away? And so, yeah, I mean, and I remember you guys took me to the lighthouse out on your boat, and I just cried and cried, and I was drunk, and I cried and cried and cried. And I know why you guys took me out there, because there's so much history and meaning for that, for me. And I just sobbed my ass off on your guys' boat, and praying to be somewhere different, praying to get through this, just broken, like fucking broken. And yeah, praying for something new. And even then, as much as I wanted it, I had no idea if I could really do it.
Wow. When you got home from that trip, were you like, okay, I need to do something different? Or was it still like, okay, I'll kind of put it off for a bit? And were there other moments like that, those moments, were there other moments like that following that, sort of those, I guess you could call them rock bottom moments?
Oh yeah, there were plenty of rock bottom moments. Plenty, lots of them. And when I got home from that trip, yeah, my intention was absolutely to, to sober up, because I knew it was not news to me. That was just another huge red flag in the face. But it was, it's only going to keep getting worse and worse until this is addressed. But so, I mean, my intention was absolutely to sober up. But I can't even say exactly why it didn't happen at the time because I just,
Mm.
after a couple of weeks, it slowly and slowly slipped back into, I guess, the power of habit and the power of not knowing like how the hell to navigate that at the time. And
Yeah.
but yeah, as far as yeah, there's been plenty of rock bottoms that
Yeah. And how did you get through those rock bottom moments? And what was the voice that kept you going, even though you're having these rock bottom moments? Like, what was the part of you that was like, was it just like, well, we'll start tomorrow? Or was it just, was that voice even there? Or, I mean, what were the voices that would battle?
oh, I think the worse that it got too, the more that was the only solution. You know what I mean? Like even
Yeah.
though I knew it was the problem, it was simultaneously the only solution. Where
Oof. Wow.
especially when I would wake up and just feel fucking heartbroken and just awful physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And some days I would like all I could do is just lay on my couch and hate myself and just kind of barely function as a human. And this wasn't like every day, but there were plenty of those days, to be honest. Um and just hate myself. And then so the only thing that brought like a shred of peace, not for lack of a better term, was like, and that was okay. I'd made it to 5 o'clock. I can have a drink. And then
Wow.
my body, probably because of how deep within the physical addiction I was with
Yeah.
it at that point in time, like just that was a
Yeah.
huge like sigh of relief. Like, okay, like literally, like, I'm not going to die. Okay. I'm going
Wow.
to be okay. Like, cause
Wow.
on those really heavy, drinking nights, that was just anyone that has been down that road with alcohol knows that there's a reason why people after a crazy night out, they have Bloody Marys and stuff the next morning because it is a Band-Aid temporarily. But, and so the deeper that I got down that path, it became the only thing that, even though I knew it was what was perpetuating, it was still the only thing in the moment that could bring me a slight bit of solace in like when I was just heartbroken. And,
Wow.
and so it was very day to day, very moment to moment because
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do another hour of
Yeah.
feeling that fucking broken.
Wow. Wow. That was so powerful to say that it was the problem, but it was also the only thing that felt like a solution. It's like your best friend and your own worst enemy all in one.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Wow. What was the day that you decided this is the last day like? Or was it just did it just happen?
I was actually in this room. This is so I about 4 months ago I'd moved out into my own little this cute little home in downtown Loveland. And yeah, in this little room, I think, and I had another friend of mine, really beautiful soul, spiritual lady, just yeah, wise soul, all the things, but she struggled for many years with alcohol as well. And I saw one of her Facebook posts, and obviously on top of everything else going on in my life where things were just not, I have an enormous heart. Like I have such a love for life. And that joy, I mean, I was suicidal. That joy was just gone. It was just gone. And that's a hard way to spend your days, moments. It's as someone that's had like really beautiful relationships with so many people, and for those relationships to no longer be that, and to know, like, not just with other people, but with myself, and just to finally get to a point where I'm like, there is no running from this. I either pretty much cut ties with most everyone in my life and keep the alcohol. Um,
Wow.
if it means, and that's, I mean, even with like siblings, like people that like I've always had a beautiful relationship with, um, never perfect, but very strong connections. And I'm like, so you either, this has gotten to a point in my life where I'm like, either I let this go, or I create a new life, like with pretty much no, very few people from the past in it. And my new life is this. And I'm like,
Wow.
by this, I mean, alcohol, keeping alcohol.
Wow.
And I'm like, I just didn't, so much just heartbreak and tears and just self-hatred, all the things. But yeah, so that friend, I saw one of her posts about it, about her being over a year sober. And of course there's a million things out there about it, but it just hit where I was
Yeah.
at the time. Like, it gave me a glimmer of hope. And so I reached out to her. She provided a bunch of different, kind of told me her experience and the things that helped her, and some links to like Alcoholic Anonymous meetings and things like that. And so completely heartbroken and just completely like self-hatred is not even the right. It's not, doesn't even encompass it. Like, just
Wow.
because I know that this is such a magical, beautiful world. I know that. and I had created something internally that and externally that felt so fucking far from that. And
Mm,
I was suicidal. I mean, I was there.
yeah.
Like I was there, and I'm like, you either try or you give up. And
Wow.
um, so I started, I joined some AA meetings. I did some different stuff, and um, in this very room, and a lot of terror and fear and all the things. But it was
Yeah.
just like it's either now or you can continue on with this. But I didn't know how to continue on either way. Like I didn't know how to get sober. I didn't know if it was even possible. I had tried many times before, never, it only lasts for a couple weeks. But I think just so fucking broken that I just didn't
Wow.
know. I knew there was something deep in me that knew that my only chance was
Wow.
trying to step away from the alcohol. And I didn't know if I could. I really didn't know if I could.
Wow.
And
Wow. Was it like, I'm going to pick this day? Or did that first day just sort of happen by happenstance?
I picked a day, and
Okay.
then it happened the next day. So the day that I picked, not honestly, I don't even remember why, whatever. But there was a reason, something. I think I was at a point where I was having like chest pain, and things like that, and having a drink would calm it down. Would um,
Wow.
and so I was like, okay, I'm like I don't think I can quit, and my body was probably at a point where a lot of people probably would have gotten medical treatment
Wow.
for that, and I had actually at that point I'd already reached out to rehabs and other things that I would never
Wow.
consider. I've actually never talked about that part, but yeah, I mean things I had never considered doing. So I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and But I'm like, okay. I'm like, I have my choice, if possible, is to do this in the comfort of my own home. And yeah, so it just finally one day I was like, okay, today's the day, and
Wow.
it was the seconds felt like
Wow.
a million years. But
Wow. And were you going to work early on this like first week of your sobriety? You were able to stay home.
no, I'm very fortunate at that point in time.
Yeah.
My foreman is my brother, and
Yeah.
and he's not unfamiliar with my situation by any
Yeah.
means, and he's my best friend, and even our relationship had turned pretty shitty, and
Wow.
we'd never had a bad relationship like that. And but so he knew well, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I have to quit, and I just didn't
Yeah.
know how to without breaking out of some kind of the same loop that I was in every day. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know how to do that, so I reached out to him. Like I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm like, I think I took about a week off work.
Yeah.
Like I can't just keep
Yeah.
falling back into the same things because it just triggers the exact same reactions in me. And I
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this became my little sobriety sanctuary where I just went to AA meetings. I went to the grocery
Yeah.
store. I laid on
Yeah.
my couch and cried a lot. And
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this kind of comes back full circle, which is why I asked about that address, because you were now, I'll share with the audience, in your first place for the first time in your life on your own, right? And how long had you been in your place that you're at right now? How long had you been in there before you decided to do this?
About 5 weeks, I guess,
You've been
roughly
there.
5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
And
were doing this on your own for the first time, being on your own ever in your life.
hmm yeah, I mean, I was in a 14-year relationship since I was 18. And then, yeah, moved back to the house that we bought for my mom to help take care of her through Alzheimer's and things like that. And so this was the first time I've lived on my own, had my own houses before. I'm a big boy, um, but always in a relationship,
Yeah.
never just my own, so
Yeah.
even like you and I've discussed before, even just that in itself was like learning how to sit, even if I kept drinking, learning how to sit here alone without all the distractions, without all the
Yeah.
familiar things.
Yeah.
That in itself was just like, holy shit, what am I doing?
Wow. So how did you get through that first week?
AA, keeping things like, and being very conscious about like what I would put in my mind about, not going to work, not going to the same places, not staying away from a lot of the things that I need to stay away from. Like I said, I just went to AA, I got groceries, I just kept life. I built a very little small bubble, and I literally, for probably over 2 months, I would watch nothing but nature movies at night. That was it.
Wow.
Nothing. But anything else was too stimulating, was too triggering, too.
Triggering.
Yeah. And so I would watch, and even nature documentaries got to a point where you see the lion eating something, and I'm like, I just want something peaceful. like I'm like, even nature's depressing. But but yeah, I had to really I had to yeah, make my world very small
Wow.
and make that like my number one
Yeah.
focus above all else.
Yeah. How physically, because I know with alcoholism, just like opiate withdrawal, the physical addiction is, uh, I mean, let alone the mental and emotional that you have to go through, but the physical withdrawal, I know for me, and I know for people who struggle with alcoholism, my ex-husband, can be very intense and almost quite dangerous, I've heard. How was the actual physical, how did you get through the physical aspects of it?
There's a lot of addiction that runs through my family, and so I've seen this, and I'm well aware of how dangerous people die from alcohol withdrawals when they try to quit, and like how sucky is that? You're trying to quit. I'm like, God,
Yeah.
might as well have a drink while you're anyhow.
Right.
That's a joke, but so I was well aware of that. This was um not something to take lightly in a
Yeah.
3D sense as far as what your physical body's going through. And I was at a point, like I said, I was having chest pains.
Wow.
There were some many other physical symptoms going in my body where I'm like screaming, "This is not good." And I there are many days where I'm like, "This, you might have a heart attack. This might be it."
Wow.
While I was, still drinking in the evenings, but so I did go and see a doctor, which took a lot of, and actually the only other time I'd ever done that and talked to a doctor about my troubles with alcohol was right after that Florida trip you and I talked about where I had fallen. I did go see a doctor and I got benzodiazepines as a short term way to, like, for a week to help me with withdrawal symptoms because I knew that my body was far enough along that maybe it was possible, but it was already hellacious enough in a lot of other levels uh, without some kind of an aid on that front. And so I did go see a doctor and they gave me, I think, about maybe a week supply of medication that's used in detox centers to
Wow.
help with the
Yeah.
physical withdrawals.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sort of helped get you through. That's really interesting. I never knew that. But the same thing, I never knew that. You never told me that. But the same thing for me when I was putting myself through opiate withdrawal, my mom had benzodiazepines and I ended up taking like two
Mhm,
during that first week just to
mhm.
help me with because the physical symptoms were horrendous. And so I never knew that about you. It's really interesting that something could be so helpful. And yet also I watched my mom go through
Yeah,
her journey
yeah,
with benzos, and it's a horrid, 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 horrid thing that can happen with those. But obviously, when used responsibly and in the way that they're sort of intended for, when a doctor can prescribe them for only 7 days and not continuing to help you
yeah,
get through that, I think that can be really helpful because, I've thought a lot about, is my calling to help people through addiction because I've been through it and I know what it takes. I know it takes a lion and a courage inside that you'll never know that you have until you reach that moment. Like, I never knew I had the courage that I had. And I remember in the midst of withdrawal going, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything in life. Like that, there's nothing that can stop
mhm,
me. And at the same time, balancing that with like putting myself into situations where I may be triggered and also watching people go through the physical withdrawal is like a whole nother beast in and of itself and being able to support that through them. And I know now they're starting to look at ibogaine as I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like it's a natural thing, but it's considered I think it's like class 3 or something. It's illegal right now, but they're actually in Colorado, I think is where they started looking at legalizing it as a way to help addiction through purely the physical withdrawal aspect of it because it helps people through that process, which I think is not talked about enough. Like it's one thing to go through all the emotional stuff that you're going to have to go through and all the pain that I'm going to ask you about that then arises when you have nothing to cover it up with and how to navigate that. But I think it's not talked about enough that just physically, I've known enough people on this journey and coaching people, two in particular I can think of, both addicted to opiates and to the point where they're hardly taking anything. So it's not even doing a thing of like getting them high anymore. It's simply so they cannot have to go through because they have lives to lead,
yeah.
to go through the physical symptoms, which, it, like I said, is a beast in and of itself. So for you to be able to have gone through that on your own, really, I mean, in your own home by yourself, there's nobody there with you, is huge. That's a big inspiration for people.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned courage too, and I think because you're someone that understands this too, that's gone through your own withdrawals and addiction and everything as well, and we're both people that have done some pretty, I think, brave things in our lives. Let go of and essentially like almost entire lives that we led in many different ways. And I will say that, and I don't say this like to terrify other people that are going through this, like, it hopefully it's inspiration because I was someone that like I really didn't think I could do it. I got to, and I was someone that used to believe I could kind of do anything. And
Yeah.
this had
Yeah.
gotten me so deep down that I'm like, I just was 90% ready to throw the towel in. And,
Yeah.
um, so it is like the most courageous thing that I've ever done. It did take the most amount of courage of anything I've ever done. Um, and again, that's not to scare anybody that's curious about it, but it is also the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. I mean, self love is something that's talked about a lot in the spiritual community, and I never really,
Mm,
and like anything else, it's I'm still learning more about that, but I've never had this kind of as difficult as that was in so many ways. I've also never felt this level of self compassion and
mm,
for myself, and also what's the word? Um, like I like myself. I actually like myself, and even that's kind of a different thing to talk about in the world today, like ego and all those things. But there's as difficult as that was, and there's really no feeling that can replace being like I like who I am, like I like who I'm becoming, and not. I used to reach for a lot of more ego based ways of finding that in myself, because I needed to find something. I needed
yeah.
it's something, to be to but to be like, no, at the end of the day, like as hard as it is sometimes, as difficult as it is, as much as I lay on that couch in the next room and cry sometimes, like I like who I am more and more than I ever, ever, ever have before. And that in itself can get you through a lot of things that can be really, really difficult.
Yeah. I think quitting an addiction is probably the biggest act of self-love you can ever do. I think that for sure. And as somebody that I know that, as you said, is so full of love and sees so much beauty in the world, you do. I mean, I've never met anyone that, with Scott, it's like I always tell him he's taught me so much about death. He's taken that fear away from me because he's so certain in what happens when we die and all of those things. And I think for you, you've been like, there's so much beauty to see in the world. There's just so much. And so to watch somebody that does see the world in that way and does know that, and then to watch them go to the other end of, like you said, like suicide, it's almost like you're feeling so much. And I think that that people who have struggled with addiction could all agree that it's almost like we feel so much that
Mhm.
overwhelming feeling is like, I can't deal with all these feelings. So gosh, I need something to sort of numb the
Yeah.
emotions that I don't know how to handle. And I talked about that a lot in my teenage years because that's really when using substances to numb myself became a thing. I mean, 12, 13 years old, I learned this. And so now on the other side, because I know personally what you've had to go through. What has it been like to navigate your inner emotional world without having anything to numb it? And let me add, I have to share that not only has this man gone through putting himself through withdrawal and quitting drinking at the same time in the last however many 100 days, he has put his mom in a memory care home, which was something he never thought he would have to do or want to do, and go through the death of his father. And so how has been not only navigating your own emotional world that you probably haven't in a very long time at least, and moving through all of those things? How have you done that?
Uh, moment to moment. Okay, I want to start here because I remember, you talking kind of made me think about this. That friend that I'd reached out to in the beginning when I was like, okay, I think I'm really ready to do this. And this was when I was still drinking in the evenings. I told her, I'm like, everyone talks about how hard it is to quit drinking, and there's so much emphasis on that. And of course, it is not easy. And I wish, I totally believe in the power of belief and everything that the seed you plant in your head. And so, I mean, I encourage everyone listening to be mindful of that as far as what you choose to believe about your own journey with addiction or with anything else. Is be very mindful about the seeds you plant in your own head as far as how your journey is gonna unfold with whatever you pursue. And that was a big part of it for me too. Was like through AA, through so many other things, you're going to be told all the time this is how it's going to be. This is going to be so hard. It's going to be this or going to be that. Um, so keep in mind that you all, like each one of us always have the power to write our own story along those lines. So I reached out to my friend and I'm like, there's so much emphasis on how difficult it is to quit drinking. And you just always hear about that. And that's kind of, in a lot of circles, you kind of explore in sobriety. That's such a heavy focus, like, oh, this is so hard. This is so hard. And it is, in my experience, it was very hard. It's not easy, but I told her, I'm like, but it has to be harder. I'm like living this life, living this way with addiction, knowing that I'm miserable, knowing that everything, like a life that I truly love and that I know that I'm capable of and I know is out there and that I know that I can't have if I keep doing this. Like that's got it. When it's all said and done, that has got to be harder than doing this, like than getting sober. And I can say it absolutely is. That is such a harder way to live your life. Like I don't know how I got through. I really, and I don't know how I functioned. I don't.
Wow.
So no, it's in my experience, it has not been easy to get sober, but it's so much easier than
Mm.
continuing to do that. And it gets easier and easier and easier. And so I guess your question was so navigating my emotions
Yeah,
without
let's start
so
there. Yeah.
let's, um, it's a beast, and you talked about being somebody that feels so much too. And just this morning I was driving around being like, holy God, like, does everyone else feel this much? Or is this just me? Like how, like, cause my heart can truly just explode. I'm like, I need to pull over. Like I'm feeling so much love and sometimes so much fear or all the things on the human spectrum. I'm like, is this normal? Do other people feel this much? And I think a lot of us do for sure. And so through that was just learning to allow those emotions. And you're actually the one that told me too. You shared a video with me as far as truly feeling those things. And the key there for me was something that you said and was allowing. So a lot of times I would lay on that couch in that living room in the fetal position, fucking sobbing, just heartbroken, so scared, so confused, so like no idea. Like, and not only through letting go of my addiction, but also like, as you said, putting my mom in a memory care home, just, you talked about past lifetimes or other experiences with people. I'm like, if there's such a thing, then God knows I've had so much time with that incredible woman, my mom. And so the amount of heartstrings that pulls on me to do that is just, there's probably not a day still to this day that I don't cry about it. I don't have to, I drop her off at memory care and she still cries as I leave. And I cry like a baby when I walk out of there. And it's something that I'm still navigating. But one thing that I told myself, when these emotions just came up so intensely, I'm like learning that these emotions will not kill you. Like these are not going to kill you. And I'm like, alcohol will, at least the way that my
Wow.
relationship with alcohol had become, and other people that are in the same kind of thing, and my father, like alcohol will kill me. I mean, these emotions will not kill me. They're, it's going to be a whole lot. So strap in and go sit down, get a blanket and get comfortable, and another thing is just being your own parent to your own inner child, and it kind of reframing the way that you navigate that and being like, hey, buddy, like, hey, little guy, I love you so much. I love you so freaking much. And gosh, this is a lot. This is so much right now. Um, but it's going to be okay. I promise you, we've been through enough together, and I got you. And go fall apart. Go fall apart. Go do what you need to do. Because I genuinely believe that when you allow yourself to do that, it is a clearing of some sorts, physically, mentally, energetically. It clears things out for you to. It always comes back around. It always does. And the more that you're able to clear out, the more expansive I feel like whatever, perspective, perception, experience, the broader that comes back around. And just knowing that it's gonna be okay. Oh, and then lastly, something you told me, which was really helpful in that, was people are like, well, how do I navigate feeling these things that are coming up? Because I think we all can feel so many things. It's not, like you said, not attaching the story to it. And that means even like if you're feeling like the victim, even if you're feeling like, what, this person can, like, okay, feel that. You're human. You're gonna feel those things. Like allow yourself to feel that, but um, that's feeling that doesn't mean like making a decision from that point of view, and it also doesn't mean feeling that from the point of view of the story, behind it. That this is it's more like, yeah, let it all out, little buddy, little man. I got you. I got your heart. I got your soul, and it's gonna be okay. And it
Yeah.
always is. Like it always is. And it's more and more, more and more and more. I guess emotional weight is lifted. I feel like the more that we allow ourselves to acknowledge that we're humans and we feel a lot of things and we don't have to run from them.
Yeah. Yeah. A few things that I want to say about that. The first thing is, it, I'm so glad you brought up about making it your own journey and your own story, because that was, I remember, the number one thing for me. Because when I decided, okay, I'm going to like cold turkey and just stop, my mom, out of all good intentions, right? Everybody was like, you don't need to do that. You can just sort of slowly taper because it's going to be too intense. And so many people, even in the spiritual community that I was a part of at the time, were like, it's going to be really bad. Withdrawal symptoms will last for 6 months. Like you won't feel normal for 6 months. And I remember so clearly being like, no, that's not my story. Like I am not going to let that be my journey. I was
Mhm.
so adamant that that was not going to be my journey, number one. And number two, exactly what you said. Like I can't be that person I want to be. I can't live that life I want to live with this. And that was the second thing for me. I know those two things were fundamental in that, especially in those early days of like having, I can't live if I'm going to live a life, it can't be this way anymore. I can't
Mhm.
take that with me. There's no possible way. And I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that for anyone that's listening, that yeah, there is so much emphasis, but making sure you find your own truth in that. Like what do I want my journey to look like? And of course it's going to be hard, but so is having a baby. And look at the reward that happens. I'm
Yeah.
not comparing addiction to having a baby. I'm just saying I've birthed 2 children out of me, and it's the most pain I've ever been in physically. And I think too, the second thing that I want to say is, well, there's actually 3 things. The second thing is, you and I have learned a lot of spiritual lessons. We've been in a spiritual community for a long time. I have gone, out of body near death experiences. I've had the wildest of the wild 3 or 5D mystical moments, and I think that the thing that has been the most profoundly changing for me is exactly what you said, to learn to love my inner child and to feel emotions. Like that for me has been, if I only do that for the rest of my life, then I have a tool that's going to help me navigate anything. Because, I've shared with you a lot, and a lot of people, that my daughter has been my biggest teacher with emotions, because she was always very emotional. Her scope of emotions was massive. And I was so uncomfortable with that because I was so uncomfortable with my own emotional states. Like I didn't know how to sit with them and sit in discomfort. And she has taught me, like, no, it's okay. Like they pass, and I
Mhm.
think for me, going through the Vipassana experience was really big in knowing I can sit with these and they will pass the more I just allow them. And you made me cry when hearing what you say to that little boy in you, because I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, I love you. I'm here. It's okay. I love you. I love you so much. You're doing so great. And I literally will say that out loud to myself
Mhm.
in whatever moment I'm navigating. And I think when we're talking about addiction and or just hard things in our life that we know we have to let go of, to have self-love and self-compassion in that way, like you said, people talk about self-love, but it's like not really understood. It's like a thing people say, but like when you're in the depths of that, and you can love yourself in those moments, whoa,
Mhm.
everything changes. Everything
It's
changes.
it does. It's such a beautiful thing, and I mean, one of the massive shifts as far as the self love and compassion that I've experienced or cultivated or whatever in this journey was, when I first quit drinking, there was so much of the, and I will, okay, dude, this too, like for anyone listening, it is what you touched back on. It is so important if, and any change in your life, whether that's addiction or anything like that, re, if you need help, find help. The tools that help you, use them is 100% use them. And keep in mind the tools that might help you will probably change and evolve over time. What you might need, what I needed week 1 of sobriety was very different than what I need right now.
Mm.
And so, there are a lot of things that AA, and again, this is, uh, everyone has their own experience and their own stories around this. And so it's nothing negative about anything. It is truly whatever helps each individual. AA was very helpful for me for the first month and a half.
Mm.
It got to a point where my beliefs about the world and how things worked, were a little broader than at least my perception of the conversations we were having. But a godsend. I don't think I probably could have gotten sober without having that community of people and amazing people. So the things that help you will likely change and evolve. And so use those resources, totally utilize them, but never forget your ability to tell your own story along the way through this, that nobody else gets to decide how this is going to be for you. There's no grand, master book on all these things. And I assume anybody listening to this podcast probably has a pretty strong, pretty firm belief in the power of their own beliefs, for sure. And so no matter what you're navigating, absolutely remember that part too as well. And really sit with the feeling of what you want your story to look like. Because you can make it that story, and use all the tools you can. And so on the compassion and self-love thing, in the beginning of getting sober, it was very much just like, anything you got to do to not drink, anything, it doesn't matter. Go spend money. Go, like, for me, it was anything I got to do to not drink. And part of that was a voice of like, and even then there was still the whole like self-hatred and shame and don't drink, you piece of shit, that kind of stuff. And what has evolved so much for me on the level of, on the front of compassion, was now I can sit there and have conversations with myself, like, the day my father died, heavy moments in life. And the inner dialogue has shifted so much, where there's that little voice that comes up, like, because it was over a 14-year habit, like, oh, what'll make this feel a little easier for right now, because it has a whole other effect long term, is a drink or whatever it is for you, whether that's eating or whatever. And the dialogue has shifted so much inside me. Now I'm like, the same kind of thing, talking to my inner, like, hey buddy, like, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. First of all, one drink does sound great. And I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm not going to sit here and like, yeah, if I could go have one drink, awesome. But that has never been that's not what I've been able to prove to myself so far. And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie to myself that doesn't sound great. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. One does. But does ruining your life sound great? I mean, because that's more what it happens. I don't know why. You didn't know why necessarily, but that's more what it does for me. At least at this point in my journey with it. So I'm like, instead of that hateful, mean voice of like, you're a piece of shit if you go drink, it's like, dude, this is really hard. Like, but do you know what would be a lot harder, is waking up with that shame and all and the heaviness and the remorse, like, because your heart knows right now that you're doing the right thing. And just having that kind of compassion for myself, like, because like, if you're going through so much, I don't want more for you, man. I don't want any more for you, buddy. Like, this is enough. And you do that, that's going to be even harder. And like, you don't deserve that, buddy. Like, you know what I mean? And actually feeling that versus the whole, like, you're a piece of, if you can't get this. And so it does shift and it does evolve, and it absolutely can. And
yeah, I think it's important to share something that you said to me that's so big, because when you're going through it and you're worried about, how am I going to get through like big life events without this thing? And I remember you saying, actually, going through everything I've gone through in the last month with my mom and with my dad and with all of this, it's actually, I couldn't have navigated it if I was drinking the way I was. Actually, like, being sober has been the best way to navigate all of this.
absolutely. I mean, I believe that something higher than myself, or maybe my higher self, whatever, it doesn't matter what you want to call it, God, whatever, knew what was ahead for me. And because the amount of like synchronicities, the amount of things that have like, because when I knew that memory care was coming one day for my mom or something similar. And we all know our parents are going to die, but I did not. That was so that week it was, my sister and I had probably toured over 20 different memory care homes, finally found one. And that even actually happened pretty quickly, because we were told, oh, you could be on a wait list for over a year. So we all thought that would be a process. We applied for one, and then all of a sudden it would happen really quick, and had to figure all that out, like the 3D logistics and the emotional part, all the things. So yeah, the day, 2 days before we moved my mom into memory care home, we get a call from in the same room. A lot of things. Actually, my dad's ashes are right there in this room, and every night I say goodnight, Dad. That's a whole other topic. But in the same room, I got a phone call I'm sitting on this computer doing all the paperwork and just going through the emotions of doing all the paperwork for memory care for my mom. And it was like they wanted us to fill out like pretty much a whole book of her life and her childhood and her, biggest moments and biggest dreams and fears. And, so definitely an emotional experience. And then I get a phone call from my dad, and he told me that he has cancer. And I knew he wasn't doing necessarily great physically, but um, I had no idea about that. And this was 2 days before we moved mom. And so like, okay, like he knew what we had going on that week with our mother. And so we made a plan. We'll come barbecue Sunday. We'll come see you Sunday. The family will come down. Like we'll figure, okay, like do our best to get mom situated in memory care. And then we'll kind of switch gears to going down to Wyoming and being with my dad. Wednesday morning, we moved my mom into memory care. And then as we're like packing her things from 5925, that mountain home that I have so much, so much love, energy, all the things around, packing her things from there into the vehicle to move her there, our dad calls us and said, "Hey, things got so much worse overnight. I'm going to hospice right now." And my dad is not someone, he stays away from the hospital. He stays away from anything. So for him to do that, it was bad. We knew it was bad as a whole other thing, but we knew it was serious. His health had taken a drastic change. So that day we moved my mom into memory care. My sister, thank God my sister was able to stay there, which was, that in itself was just like the pinnacle of so much emotional work for my entire lifetime that day. And then halfway through, it was like, okay. So me and my brother went down and drove down to Wyoming to go see my dad at hospice. Um, and it was, yeah, it was so much all at once. So much. And I, like I said, I know something bigger than me, like knew that these things were coming. And no, it's not easy to do any of these things. It's heartbreaking in a lot of ways. And that's part of the human experience, but it would have been the same thing I said earlier about when you, not quitting is harder than quitting, like not navigating these things without the clarity of mind and the heart that I built because of sobriety. I can only imagine. I would probably still be just completely broken, not just the windows of where I feel completely broken and need to let it all out, but I would have probably largely just stayed there versus allowing those moments and being able to, okay, the world is still spinning. There's still beauty. There's still love. There's still all these things. And there's a lot of life lessons for you happening all so quickly.
Yeah.
And so be kind to yourself, but there's also more, and I know that the clarity that's come from that, the clarity of heart and mind that's come from that is the only thing that has got me through these moments in the way that they have.
Wow. So speaking of clarity, now that, your mind is clear, you could argue, has there been any big insights you've had into life, into yourself, now that you're completely sober? None.
No, not zero.
Any you would like to share, I guess I should ask.
A ton. And I mean, so much of it is, I guess, moment to moment, but I mean, I don't know. And I'm the kind of person that I drive around and like, we don't even know, at least I don't know why we're here, why we exist, why we're doing all the things we do. And we show up to work and and it's just like this like constantly expanding universe. And here we are just doing this life thing, so I don't know. And I don't know if that I'll ever necessarily know, but so I can't say that I've like walked away with like one key giant gem of wisdom through all that. But I do know that there's a hell of a lot more hope and peace and just gentleness through all that and kind of accepting like I don't necessarily know, and the more that I need to know, the more that I'm probably not in the right energy to even see these things that I need to see. And it's just a whole different way to learn to be human with yourself and learn to be kind with yourself and learn to navigate this, moment by moment. And it is more gentle. And that's, I think all of us could use, I don't know anyone that couldn't use a little bit more gentleness and this beautiful, wild thing that we call life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think more than anything with you, I've seen this gentleness because I know it in myself. I know that we are both very capable of pushing hard and doing big things, which, we can appreciate and love. And yet I think, like we talked about this before, it's almost like when you get on the journey of self-help, you almost get this other like voice of condemnation is like, you're not doing good enough. And something I had to start asking myself was like, has that voice ever helped me? Like that voice never helped me. You know, like you said, you're a piece of shit, stop drinking. Like that voice was never, it kept, you know, it's like this underlying level of self-hatred. And we think that that's the voice that's going to get us out of doing the things that we know aren't healthy for us, but it actually just keeps perpetuating them. And I think the gentleness, I see it in you. I see this like soft gentleness now. I feel it in me. I'm more soft, gentle with myself, like just being more compassionate and more loving. And I think we're so afraid that if we don't have that harsh voice, we're not going to, you know, continue to grow or work on the things we need to work on. I think you learn to do it from such a different place when you have that voice that's like, it's okay.
And it's more, what's the word for it? Sustainable for sure.
Sustainable. Yeah.
And it's even more than sustainable. I don't know, but and I don't know, rewarding or enriching. Like here's an example. So to me, this is kind of a switch in like the way that I've kind of perceived my own growth. So a new habit I started was like going to the gym in the morning. It's like waking before in the morning after I've worked 10-hour days, long days, you know, physically demanding days, and go to the gym, work out, lift weights, like push outside of a comfort zone that, you know, like all the fears of like, who am I? Who's this guy in the gym who doesn't know what he's doing and all these things. And, you know, and like being willing to, as they say, suck at something new. Until, you know, and so anyhow, so I'm proud of that, like of taking those steps. Cause like you said, you and I can be like, there's that side of us that are very much like pushers and doers and accomplishers and all those things. But here's the key for me is that, so yesterday I was at the gym, I got all ready to go and everything. And it's still like out of my comfort zone. It's still, you know, but it's becoming more and more and more like, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing. It feels good to be here. And so when I sat down on the first weight machine I was going to use, and I did like 3 whatever reps, and I was like, I hurt. I'm like, my body hurts. This does not feel good. And I'm like, then don't work out, you know, which the energy that I used to have such a difficult relationship with my body image and my weight and all the things. And like, I mean, it would really beat the heck out of my own body in the name of getting in shape or feeling good. And one more way to try to be liked, I guess, or whatever, be seen, be worthy of all the, you know, all the things in society. So I was, if not more proud of myself for the voice yesterday, where I was like, dude, this doesn't feel good. Like your body's sore. I'm like, relax. And so I'm like, okay. So I just got up and I left the gym, and I'm just as proud if not more proud of that than the fact that I've created this new habit of going to the gym, was that I had the compassion and self-love and to be like, this dude, your body needs a break. Like this is not about doing this from this energy, this like almost very painful energy of you must do this, you must push, you must grow stronger. It's like, no, like, so to me, it was an even bigger one than creating that habit in the first place, was watching the energy that I'm creating these habits in, and why I'm actually doing them to begin with. Like,
and making it something that you said, like, is in a healthy expression of just wanting to take care of yourself, as opposed to, I need to push myself to all extremes, I think is just what we all need more of. So what is like daily life for you now without having to worry about drinking? Like, what does it feel like on a day-to-day basis now?
I feel like I'm a million different people from like in one day. And I think
I get that.
Okay. I think we all feel that way. I think, and so it's fascinating because, and I've kind of, that's been helpful to me, that knowing that, like, don't hold on so tightly to everything. Like, it's like, it's going to be different. Like your own life experience, your own wisdom, your own fears, doubts, all the things, like, it's in a week, there's going to be shifts in everything around you and yourself internally. So like, don't hold on to everything so tightly, and allow it to just kind of flow and walk through that. So as I navigate those things that are like always changing, including myself, which is good, that's a good thing. It is moment to moment, and there has also been like huge, kind of once in a lifetime type things going on pretty quickly in early sobriety. So I can't necessarily say that like one day is in any way the same as the one before that, but it's just so what my days actually look like, it's like I have my outside, the outer habits, you know, like cultivating the new, like the gym and the sauna and meditation and all the things that I know that help produce those happy little chemicals in my body, and helping myself out in the ways that I know to help myself out,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure, giving myself those tools. And, but so much of it is just more of the inner dialogue, I guess, going
Mhm.
on. It's like, I've told you this before, where I feel like sometimes I can be so in my own little, and not in a bad way, like, so, like, here's my world up here mentally, and then here's the outside world. And like, so I have a human body. These are the things I need to do that make me feel good, that produce those chemicals that help me on those fronts, and checking those boxes. But I feel like I'm in my own little spaceship at the same time as I do all these outside things. And so what's ultimately the most important to me is the atmosphere of that spaceship, you know?
Mhm.
And so I'm just kind of, it's day to day, and it kind of depends. Some days are just like so um flow really easily, and all the things that feel good, you know what I mean? And some days there's a lot of the other grief and the pain and the struggle. But I think, and I guess not even necessarily struggle, because I think the more that I've worked with that relationship around it, it's not a struggle. It's just an allowance of, hey, this is human. Like, it's not bad that you're feeling pain. It's not bad that you're feeling grief. You're not failing. You're not doing any of this wrong. It's not a matter of that at all. It's like, you're human. And this is just like death is as normal as birth, like pain is as normal and natural as joy and all these things. And so just allowing all of it, and yeah,
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back to some kind of a home base as you do it all. And
Yeah. Yeah. I the moment you said to me a few weeks ago, I was like, "Yes, that is it." You were like, "I don't look at, what we would call the goo or the pain or the deeper emotions or the harder emotions. Like, I don't look at that as like something I'm trying to escape from, or I'm failing, or I'm not high all the time." Like, that is a messy truth of transformation, especially when you're a part of communities that are, more spiritual or more personal growth centered. The focus can become like we need to be high or happy all of the time. And I
Mhm.
think that when you said, I don't even look at those moments as like something I need to avoid anymore. They're just part of the journey just as much as the other parts. Like you said, like accepting that, and in that acceptance without the resistance, there's almost I hate to say joy, but there's just almost a peace
Mhm.
in those hard moments.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Peace is the right word for that, for me too. Yeah. I mean, what do they say? What you resist persists. I may, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's an absolute peace in knowing that, like, this isn't, when you build that wall of like, oh my God, here comes this fear or this pain or the sadness, like, you build that wall, then there is this massive resistance to it. And it does make it much more difficult to, then you create this concept that this is not peaceful. This is not all these other things, when who's to say that grief can't be peaceful as much as it is possible? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
it doesn't mean that grief feels different than joy, but there can still be, I think there can be peace and grief as much as there's peace and joy, if that makes sense, and
Absolutely.
the allowance of it.
Yeah. I think that's so big for especially anyone listening right now that's maybe struggling with addiction. Like, I think that's the most important thing that they can hear and that you can share. So sort of bringing it to to a closing point, what would you tell somebody that's listening that was in your shoes a few months ago, that is so scared of change, or that they don't believe that they can, like you did? What do you say to them?
You can, you can. And this is coming, and I know the story in itself isn't necessarily unique. I mean, it's a very common theme in addiction stories that you hear, where people were rock bottom, suicidal, all the things. And so that in itself is not unique. But for each person it's unique. When me sitting in my own heartbreak was very unique, just like for anyone listening that might be going through that, whether that's with addiction or anything else in their life, that they just deeply know it's time to shift. Put some energy into what that might feel like, if you made that shift, like, and
Mm,
you can do it, like, you really can do it, because this is coming from someone that sat here who thought that I really couldn't. And again, that's not unique. That's to the sobriety story. That's, a lot of people have that same voice. And so when I say that to share that, like, I understand the desperation and that low point where you really do feel like this may be it. Like, this may take you out, and you may not have what it takes to do this. Um, when it feels like the world around you is just almost completely collapsed, you can do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's all kinds of, there's almost infinite resources. Um, that can help you through this. And the biggest one will ultimately be like your desire, and then knowing that there is so much more. There is truly so much more on the other side of this. And what I said earlier, not just for me, I think this is true for anybody going through addiction. It is so much harder. It is so much harder to stay the same than it is to change. And that does not mean that making changes are going to all be easy and rainbows and butterflies, but in the bigger picture, it is 10 times harder to stay the same than it is to change. The rewards you get from changing are just, will literally blow your mind and open your heart in ways you can't even imagine. And I'm new on the sobriety journey, so I have many friends that are 20 years, all kinds of things. And they all report the same good news, that it just continuously expands in more and more beautiful, powerful ways. And my God, you are so worth, like, if you are here living this life, like, you are so worth giving yourself the opportunity to have a good one, to have an amazing life, like to have all the things in this world through all of it. And you deserve that. You absolutely deserve that. There's no one on the planet of this earth that does not deserve those things. And
Yeah.
you can have one. Reach out, find whatever resonates with you. There's so many different ways. But there is something, I promise you, there is something for everybody.
So last question, what is one messy truth of transformation that still surprises you?
What comes to mind on that is kind of what I touched on earlier, is how much this body can feel, like how much this, I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I told you this before, when I told my brother, I'm like, yeah, I'm practicing kind of feeling my emotions more. He's like, because I'm a pretty open emotionally individual. And he's like, are you sure? You sure you need to do that? Like, and I'm like, no, that doesn't mean walking around like the street just crying and falling apart. Like, that's not what that means. And I think that's how he perceived it. He's like, I think you feel a lot already, man. And I'm like, I definitely do. But it's, I don't know, feeling it in a different way and allowing those feelings. And so, yeah, there's still that voice in me that's just like, wants to kind of like get there. Like, okay, I felt the things. I felt it. Like, okay, all right, I put in my time of feeling.
Totally.
Like, where's the rainbow?
Yeah.
And so it's, I guess, is kind of getting rid of that expectation. So yeah, I'm still blown away. Like, yeah, the human mind and body and soul is capable and blessed to feel an incredible amount of things. And but it can be a much better experience with those emotions when, the more you allow them, and the more that you're like, oh yeah, here we go. This is it. That this is normal. It's not.
Yeah.
So just allowing all of it.
Going, my journey starting with going in such high spiritual realms and experiencing amazing things. But for me, the journey into my humanness has been the most insane. I mean, I've had some insane moments, but going into like the human landscape in its totality is like, whoa, this is wild. Whatever thing we're doing here, it's wild for sure.
Yeah. I love that, the human landscape in its totality. Yeah, I love that. That's a good way to put that, because it is.
Yeah.
Well, like, oh, okay, it's so much, and it's so much in all the ways, and such a good thing, But and I can relate to the whole. I'm really good at laying on that couch and feeling all the beautiful, amazing, wonderful things. Like, I'm really good at that. And even that I've seen in myself is at times like an escape. Even your meditation can be an escape.
Totally.
I don't want to feel this. Like, I know how to feel all this, so I'll go feel all that, because that feels really great. And so yeah, it's all.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful, messy truth to end it with. I can't thank you enough for doing this for me, because I know this was a big thing for you. This isn't something you've really shared much, and so I know this was sort of a big deal for you to share this with the world, and finally let people know what you've been going through. And I mean, there were some things you shared with me today I had no idea, and I just whoa honor the journey you've been on, and I see the lightness that has come over you now. I know when we're going through it, there's so much shame, which is so heavy, and and the lightness, but the softness and the gentleness I think that I see in you now is just, it's really, really, really profound and beautiful to watch. So thank you. And not just thank you to me, but thank you to, I know so many people that will listen to this and relate, and just you sharing will change somebody's life for sure. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say too is
Yeah.
you share that this is such a big deal for me to talk about, and the awesome part is it's actually not, and that's
Wow.
2 months ago it would have been. There's
Wow.
so much shame, so much all the things around it, and yeah, there's that voice in my head like, oh, people that have known me for years, they're going to hear all these things. I'm like, okay, hear it. Like I it's all good. I'm still me. Like,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it is nice to have that feeling like as much as it's also much in certain ways like to be like, okay, this is what it's like to be me, and that's totally fine,
Yeah.
and here's the parts of me that I was so afraid of other people seeing that I'm really not anymore,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
feels nice.
Yeah. It feels nice. That feels really nice.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Em. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you
Yeah.
having me on here.
Well, that is a wrap for another episode of The Messy Truth. I'm going to put some links to different support places in the show notes and in the description, just so if you are somebody that's ready to take that leap, that I'll offer some places that have been helpful for Stanton and for I on our journey of the messy truth of transformation and addiction for sure. So we will see you all on the next episode. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode. If this episode resonated in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with somebody who's in the thick of it too. If you want more behind the scenes, or you want tools to support you along your journey of messiness, come hang out with me over on Instagram at mhollis_thesage. But most importantly, just remember, the mess is part of the magic.